Vamos, 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 yapale, yapale, yapale. Ay, ay, ay. Vamos, 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 yapale, yapale, yapale. Ay, ay, ay. Wukak, Djak, Murapuk. Ay. Wukak, Djak, Murapuk. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Walama. Ay, ay, ay. Ay. Vamos, 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 yapale, yapale, yapale. Ay, 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 ay. Vamos, 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 yapale, yapale, yapale. Ay, ay, ay.
We're now standing on the Lodden River. This is about 6 kilometres north of Barringup. It's a place that not many people know about, and we've come here and we're telling you about this because it's sort of been lost to history for a whole range of reasons. It was important in 1840 because this was the original site that Edward Parker, who was the Assistant Protector of Aborigines, finally chose as the place to start this Aboriginal Protectorate. We now know that it was an idea that was bound to fail, but he was motivated by the best of Christian intentions, and after looking a lot of places in the landscape, he ended up coming here. Just to go back a bit, Parker had arrived in Melbourne a year or so beforehand, and he'd been camping temporarily at a site somewhere near Sunbury with his wife and young family. He had a lot of kids, and they were reluctant to move out of that place because they were moving sort of beyond Melbourne into an area where there was no other white settlement, and it was a long way away. And so he basically had a series of expeditions during early 1840, trying to hit on exactly where he might go. And after a lot of searching and a couple of trips into the northwest, he ended up finding this area right here on the Lodden River on a very big waterhole.
This was probably a traditional camping place. When this place didn't work out so well, they said they'll move to their other favourite traditional camping place, which was over at the foot of Mount Franklin or Lalgambuk. A couple of little things that we know about. One, the Aboriginal name or the Dja Dja Wurrung name for the place is Neereman, or Neereman, which we thought sort of means to hide here or to feel safe here. But Barry, I think you found another word close and with a bit of a different meaning. But again, we're on the Lodden River. You know, there's rich countryside here. The Dja Dja Wurrung people are known as the Lodden River people. So this was another one of their favourite camping places. There's another one just up the road. We've got the one at Dalesford or at Mount Franklin. There's Lana Barramal, which means place of the emu. And we've got another one just up the road from here at Eddington called Lanakuri, which probably means place of the kangaroo. So we know that people camped here. There's even a corroboree site down the river a bit. So it's more than likely this was a favourite traditional camping place, but it was also rich in resources and fish. You found another word close to Neereman, and which may have a different meaning, Barry.
Yeah, in some of the writing in the last 100 years, people have sort of thought through Parker it might have been about Neereman meaning something about hide here, but I found in a Corandurk dictionary a word spelt much the same, Neereman, which means high bank, Now, it might be that hide here and high bank mean the same thing, because a high bank could be a good place to hide, but that's what characterises this site. When we're standing up here on this hill, looking down onto this huge section of river, flanked by original huge river red gums, this is an incredibly high bank. And to explain why the idea of coming here, I mean, it sounds bizarre now, but basically we've got a list of all of the tools that Parker brought to this site. And his idea was basically he bought a whole lot of wheelbarrows, picks, shovels, a big box of English seeds. And so they basically created a cultivation paddock here. And the idea was that if you could get Aboriginal people to garden, that somehow they would become civilised and Christian. But we can sort of say that was not such a good idea in retrospect. But that was the prevailing view, was if we can get these people to live in one place and be productive and be self-sufficient, then we will bring them to God. But, I mean, they had a whole range of problems on this site. Parker talked about trying to run a church service, and he couldn't get the men and women to assemble in the same place. You might like to talk about that. Why might that have been, Ricky?
Well, it was probably more than likely men's business and women's business. You know, Aboriginal society, if you look at the Kulin Nation, which is all the central Victorian tribes, Kulin or Cooley, it means man. So sort of a man-orientated peoples. So it was probably quite a divided thing at the start. The men would congregate with the men and the women would congregate with the women. But they landed at the end of a very dry spell. So hence the failure of their crops.
Yep.
And vegetable crops and stuff. So it was sort of failure before it even began.
And there was another reason why this place failed. Basically, it was because when Parker chose this site, there were very few squatters in the landscape. But by the time he got there, he had Simpson, who was on Charlotte Plains. He had McKinnon up on the foot of Tarrangower. Hepburn was over at Cruikshank. So there were a whole lot of squatters that were taking up the land, excluding the Aboriginal people from the waterholes. And so there was conflict and death, and obviously people were running out of food. And these squatters came into Parker's right on this site and basically said to them, "What the hell are you doing here? Why are you having anything to do with these people?" And so the squatters actually challenged Parker and said, "You know, why are you here helping these people? We're trying to farm this place," and obviously had very different views about this stuff.
The last thing they wanted was an Aboriginal reserve in their back paddock.
Exactly. And so it wasn't just the drought that caused people to leave this place. It was basically the pressure from the squatters. And what made it even worse was that by that stage, the squatters actually owned the newspapers, and some of the squatters in this area actually owned some of the newspapers in Melbourne. So they were feeding pretty negative stories back to Melbourne to try and get the government to basically reverse the protectorate policy. So basically they were only on this site for maybe 8 or 10 months, and then they moved all of the people. As many as 200 people were actually on this site, and they moved back to an area of land that had been recently given up by Mollison on the edge of Mount Franklin. It was one of the first places in northwestern Victoria where there was at least some attempt to do something other than move people off country. And while it's important that we're critical of what they did, and it's important to be critical of the negative things that happened here, I guess we have to acknowledge that they were giving something a go. What's different about this area and why we've come here is not because this is a heroic thing that the settlers and the government did. It's just that there's a huge amount of evidence here about what was and about what happened. And I guess the whole reason for this reconciliation processes is that we're able to acknowledge what happened. And that's what this tour has been all about. It's not about guilt, but it's about truth. For me, as a non-Aboriginal person, it's really important that when we live in a landscape, we acknowledge what happened. And if we don't do that, then we're living something of a lie.
Exactly, Barry. I went to school, primary school and secondary school in the area or over at Castlemaine, and we learnt that Captain Cook arrived and there was Aborigines. We didn't learn there was 200 on a reserve, just 15 odd k's out the road and stuff. So yeah, I agree, mate. We need to educate the local people about the local history, and I think if we can do that, well, we're putting one foot in front of the other towards reconciliation by educating the wider community.
Yep.
There's not many places, there's probably no places that Aboriginal people didn't walk, didn't sit down, didn't camp, didn't hunt, didn't gather, and there's stuff still in the landscape, canoe trees, grinding stones and stuff. But, there could be stuff very well in your own backyard. If you look, we can dig away at a bit of ground and find stone tools, earth ovens and stuff. So a message I'd think would like people to take away is Aboriginal people probably camped where your house is, probably travelled down these roads that were probably Aboriginal walking tracks that now become roads. If you can look closely in the environment, there's still evidence of Aboriginal occupation, even around on the edges of our townships. We're finding grinding stones and rock wells and things. So, yeah, to deny Aboriginal occupation is walking around with your head in a bag. Wukak, Diak, Motapuk. Wukak, Diak, Motapuk.